After watching the process of making the silver teapot, I finally understand why Musk says that the East is the most mysterious place in the world. Just for a pure silver teapot, it requires over 50,000 hammer strikes, and at least 30 different procedures, taking half a month to complete. To reflect a noble quality, a pure silver spout is paired with pure gold, showcasing the stunning detail of a single dragon playing with a pearl. This is a workshop famous far and wide in the area, primarily making various highly challenging handmade teapots. The first step in making a silver teapot is for the workers to pour spoonful after spoonful of pure silver beads into a dry pot, and then they ignite the burner to continuously heat the silver. Once the temperature reaches 900 degrees Celsius, the particles in the pot will melt into a bowl of liquid silver. Then, while continuing to heat, the liquid is poured into a mold. After the liquid is poured in, it solidifies into a silver plate at a visibly fast rate, which is the total amount needed for the body of the teapot. The silver plate is then fed into a rolling mill, where it undergoes more than 5 passes of rolling, while continuously measuring the diameter of the silver plate and the thickness of the material. If the quality is met, it will proceed to the next process. Here, the cutting workers will trim the square shadow board repeatedly. Only when the edges are cut perfectly round will the most endurance testing process of this round begin, making the silver base. From this moment on, the master craftsman will hammer the silver plate for more than 10 days, during which time he will use the flashing lights and other methods. Basic hammering method, thus changing the shape of the silver plate. In a blink of an eye, the silver plate has become a pot, and then it is transported to the front for tempering. The so-called tempering is to reduce the internal stress generated during the hammering process, so as to avoid the risk of cracking of the silver plate. Did you know? In this round of pot making, tempering is as high as more than 20 times. Next, the embryo is shaped. First, a standard circle is drawn on the bottom, and then the edge of the circle is hammered continuously with a wooden hammer. This is done to bring the edge closer inward. After years of work, the old man's hearing has been indelibly damaged, and he can only use earmuffs to bring a little comfort to this boring and repetitive life. Although his hearing is damaged, he still works in this industry, not choosing to leave. This might be what everyone refers to as passion. Next, using a compass, we draw a circle at the bottom, and with a rubber hammer, we gradually pound inward. Then we strike the bottom with the same frequency. You're not mistaken. It's just this one spot. After the elder hammered over 500 times, he then used a third of his strength to pound around the bottom 1,000 times. Once the desired brightness is achieved, we can start straightening the upper half of the teapot body. In fact, some skills have been lost for a reason. Take this teapot, for example. An apprentice has to study for 5 years, and then practice for another 3 years, making it nearly 10 years before they can graduate, and even then, what they make might not necessarily sell. So it's really not something just anyone can do. Next, we trim off the excess parts. Now we come to the most exciting part. First, we place the tools on the wood, and then spend an hour hammering out a tiger's mouth along the side. Then, a few levers are selected and placed on one side of the wood. Next, a round hole is drilled at the protruding point, and eyes are wide open. The exciting part comes when the old man places the body of the teapot on the lever and starts to hammer it continuously. And in no time, the shape of the spout begins to form. You can imagine this pot spout. Do you know how many days it takes to hammer it into shape? Then the pot body is tempered and hammered thousands of times. Now we are going to process the details. First, we use a file to do the basic grinding, and then use a grinder to grind the pot spout twice. Now we only need to hammer 3 times to remove the seal, and the unique text will appear on the bottom. At this point, the pot body is basically formed. Next, we go to another workshop to make the handle. First, clean the mold, then press the 2 sides of the well into the injection holes of the machine. Through high-pressure injection, the mold will be completely filled and put aside to solidify. After solidification, disassemble it, and you can take out the complete wax film with just a little effort. The shape of the wax film will vary depending on the casting. For example, these ones in front of you look very strange. Then, take out the tools and prepare to fix the 2 parts together. Since the wax mold is made of wax, we can simply heat the 2 parts to stick them together. Once the wax mold is finished, we place a porous cylindrical steel on top and carefully check it. Then, we pour the prepared plaster into the steel pipe and move on to the next platform. Next, we cover the surface with a large transparent dome, and at this point, we can start spinning it wildly. Under the effect of high-speed rotation, the plaster can fill every gap, making the spout casting more defined. Then, we place it in an electric furnace and manually adjust the temperature switch. It undergoes high-temperature heating for 10 minutes, and then is slowly taken out. At this point, you can see that the plaster has solidified into a single piece. Next, we pour water into one side of the plaster until it's completely filled, allowing it to overflow, and wait for 10 minutes. The water will solidify into one piece. After that, we pick it up and toss it into the water, shaking it vigorously. After waiting for the plaster to melt, the complete pure silver fittings can be officially removed. To make the casting more solid, we also need to use a heating process to continuously heat it, which is equivalent to tempering. Next, we move on to the next step, repairing the teapot handle, where the worker continuously grinds the spout with a grinder. This is mainly done to remove the burrs created during the casting process. Next, a round hole is drilled in the center of the lid, and then we start welding. Since silver melts very easily, we have to be extremely careful during the welding process. The slightest carelessness will lead to failure. Then apply a proper amount of drought-aiding agent and stick the silver block to the surface of the silver pot. Once both are heated, the silver piece can be firmly welded to the body of the kettle. This welding point is where the handle hook of the teapot will be attached. Next, we move on to the next step of making the teapot handle, where the worker continuously hammers the silver plate inward. Once the round tube is formed, they apply an appropriate amount of flux to the seams. At this moment, it's welding. For welding, this round mainly uses the spot welding technique, which greatly enhances the aesthetic appeal. Then, it's fixed vertically to the workbench. And another piece of silver is placed together with the fixture and welded securely. Next, it's dropped into water to cool naturally. Once the temperature reaches the right state, it's officially taken out and the handle is polished all around. This step is mainly to improve the tactile feel of the handle. Then, a hammer is used to slowly tap one side until the surface develops a few shiny spots. This means that the hammering was very successful this time. Now he started to show his unique skills. The old man bent the handle hard and changed the shape of the handle into such a regular shape. Then, the handle is shaped on both sides and hammered repeatedly until it forms a hook shape and a complete handle is formed. In order to make the teapot more textured, the lid and body of the teapot are repeatedly polished with a grinder, and the outer side of the teapot is continuously heated at a temperature of over 100 degrees. Next, a suitable amount of liquid is dipped and applied to the surface of the teapot, causing a dramatic change in its overall appearance. This layer of dye acts as an antiquing effect, while the inside of the teapot remains shiny and unaffected. The next step is to dip and apply another suitable amount of liquid. Use a steel wool to brush off the colorful patterns on the surface. This step is actually very similar to antique aging. Now look carefully at the surface. After brushing the pot body, can you see that the faint black and grey texture can also be improved accordingly? Then clean the surface repeatedly. After the water inside the pot is dried, this is the pure silver teapot that has been knocked thousands of times. Then the pure leather is tied to the handle tightly, one of which is to prevent slipping. It also has a certain decorative effect. Then, the handle is hooked into place, and once it's in the right position, you just need to pull it outward. Using pliers, lift one side firmly. And at this point, the two parts fit together snugly, looking very aesthetically pleasing. Now, take out another precious metal, a solid gold decorative ball. You heard that right. This is a solid gold ornament, and just one of these gold balls is worth at least 4 figures. Now we move on to the display segment, showcasing the exquisite details of the teacup. It has significantly elevated the entire set of utensils. As the saying goes, the elegance of the great way is that tea is the mother of tea, and chi is the father of tea, with the spirit of the tea ceremony lying in Chia. So, do you know how much this chi sells for?